The Charleston Heritage Foundation's annual gala smelled like old money and new ambitions, gardenia arrangements, aged whiskey, and expensive perfume from bottles without price tags. Crystal chandeliers transformed polished marble into fractured rainbows. Seren Vale stood at the edge of the crowd in midnight blue silk, feeling both visible and invisible simultaneously. She'd debated attending for 3 weeks. The invitation suggested someone thought she still mattered in Charleston's social ecosystem. But she knew better. Invitations went to anyone who donated above a certain threshold before her life had imploded 6 months ago. The champagne in her hand remained untouched, condensation sliding down crystal like tears she'd stopped shedding. She'd positioned herself near the French doors, escape routes and clear sightlines to entrances. Survival instincts didn't disappear just because you wore a designer dress. Seren Vale. The voice sliced through ambient noise like a blade through silk. Smooth, familiar, devastating. Julian Hart materialized beside her with the casual confidence of someone who'd never questioned his right to any space. Savile Row tuxedo, St. Bart's tan, and that same weapon smile he'd wielded since they'd met 4 years ago. Julian. Neutral, flat water offering nothing. His eyes traveled down her dress with proprietary assessment. You look good. Different, but good. He paused, bourbon raised. Still single? The smirk was small, but carried every humiliation he'd inflicted, every confidence he'd weaponized. The question itself was the weapon, implying her value required external validation. Before she could respond, warmth settled against her lower back. A hand, large and steady, radiating heat through thin silk. Actually, a voice like smoke over gravel spoke from behind her. European accent evident. She's with me. The hand guided her backwards against a solid chest that smelled like sandalwood and moonless nights. An arm circled her waist while another extended past her toward Julian. Caspian Volkov. The name dropped with the weight of reputation. Seren felt Julian's recognition in his posture shift, subtle but unmistakable. The same expression from when business deals collapsed spectacularly. But this was different. This was fear disguised as social grace. Julian's hand dropped first. His bourbon glass trembled, sending ripples across amber liquid. Julian Hart, we, Seren and I used to, I know who you are. Caspian's gentle interruption made it more devastating. His hand remained at Serene's waist, protective and possessive equally. Seren's told me all about you. All about you. Every humiliation, every betrayal. The sentence hung weighted with implications. Julian's expensive tan drained in stages. His eyes darted between them, searching for the explanation that would restore his understanding of how the world worked. Seren Vale, whose money had evaporated, whose career he'd undermined, whose confidence he'd eroded, was wearing a dress costing more than monthly rent, protected by a man who made billionaires nervous. But to understand this moment, the story needed to rewind. 6 months earlier, to a version of Seren who'd thought she'd lost everything worth having. 6 months before the gala, Seren had believed her life was salvageable. That belief lasted until she walked into the gallery opening on Meeting Street and found Julian's tongue down Cassidy Beaumont's throat. The champagne glass slipped before conscious thought registered, crystal shattering against marble. The sound cut through conversation, drew the attention she'd spent 2 years learning to avoid. Julian looked up, surprise to irritation to calculation. Not guilt, never guilt. He disentangled from Cassidy with casual ease, crossing toward Seren like she'd committed the transgression. Seren, this isn't what it looks like. Except it was exactly what it looked like. 27 people knew it. By morning, Charleston's entire social circuit would know. Humiliation wrapped around her throat like hands. She'd wanted to scream. Instead, she stood frozen while her mind recontextualized 2 years. Business trips that lasted too long, phone calls in other rooms, criticism that had systematically eroded her confidence. "We should talk about this in private," Julian said, reaching for her elbow. She jerked away, stumbling into a waiter. Champagne splashed across her dress. Vintage Chanel Julian had bought for their anniversary. The stain spread like blood in water. Cassidy laughed, a small sound quickly stifled, but audible enough. Seren fled, pushed through gallery doors into Charleston's humid September night, gasping, tears destroying 3 hours of makeup. The Uber driver asked if she was okay 3 times before giving up. Her studio apartment, dark, small, deserved, waited. She spent that night on the bathroom floor, the ruined dress still on because removing it required energy she didn't possess. By dawn, 43 messages accumulated, some concerned, most gleeful, all confirming her humiliation was thorough and public. Julian sent one text: "You're overreacting. Call me when you're ready to be reasonable." She blocked his number, blocked Cassidy's, blocked 17 others whose friendship had been conditional. Social media purge took an hour, removing tags, deleting photos, erasing 2 years. The next 3 months were survival. Not healing, just existing. She quit her job at the Arts Foundation where Julian served on the board. Savings lasted 6 weeks, then came asking for her old coffee shop position back, serving lattes to people who didn't recognize her as someone who'd mattered. Therapy helped. The community clinic counselor patiently addressed her tendency to defend Julian's behavior, to accept blame for something he'd demolished. 8 sessions before she could say emotional abuse without qualifying it. Month 4 brought almost human feelings, walks along the waterfront, stopped checking Julian's social media, bought thrift store clothes she actually liked. Month 5 brought unexpected strength, started painting again, something Julian had dismissed as a cute hobby. Small canvases at first, experiments in color. A gallery owner saw her work at an art market and offered a spot in a group show. That show led to the art auction where everything changed again, where he walked into her life. The Gibby's museum auction was accidental attendance. Marcus Chen, her gallery owner, needed to fill seats at his table. She accepted because refusing felt like letting fear make decisions. The museum after hours possessed different quality. Shadows pooled where afternoon light usually reached, portraits watching with more intensity. Seren positioned herself before a landscape painting, using it as genuine interest and social shield. "You're standing wrong." He'd been leaning against the wall, tall, over 6 feet, with Eastern European features and silver-gray eyes. His bespoke suit worn with ease, suggesting he'd forgotten clothing had value beyond function. "I'm sorry?" "For viewing art." He moved beside her, close enough she caught his scent, sandalwood and something darker. "You're standing at the polite distance, but this painting was meant to be seen 3 feet closer. See how the brush strokes resolve?" She stepped forward. He was right. The painting transformed, technique suddenly visible. "You know art," she observed. "I know acquisition. Art just happens to be something worth acquiring, among other things." His smile barely curved his mouth. "Seren Vale." She extended her hand. His handshake lasted longer than professional, his thumb brushing her knuckles deliberately. "Caspian Volkov." The name registered as familiar, but she couldn't place why. They talked about art with careful politeness, strangers suspecting they might become something else. Later, on the museum steps, he found her waiting for her ride. "You never told me if you paint or just appreciate." "Both." though the appreciation came first and the painting is still learning to be worth appreciating. Something shifted in his expression. I'd like to see your work sometime. It should have been throwaway, but the way he delivered it, direct eye contact, stripped of performance, sounded like actual intent. Why? He studied her. Because someone who stands wrong until corrected, then immediately adjusts when given better information, values getting things right more than being right. That's rare enough to be interesting. No one had called her interesting in months. Julian had called her difficult, oversensitive, demanding, never interesting. Her ride arrived. He opened her door with old-world courtesy. I'm in Charleston through the weekend. He offered a business card. Simple black, embossed lettering, just name and number. If you'd like to discuss art or anything else. The card stayed in her purse 3 days before she called. Not from doubt, but preparation for what calling might mean. He answered second ring as if expecting her. I paint people who are broken, she said instead of hello. Or maybe I paint broken people. I haven't decided which. His pause lasted just long enough to make her wonder if she'd miscalculated. Then I should fit your collection perfectly, Caspian replied. Come to dinner tomorrow. Bring your pain. I'll bring mine. We'll see if they speak the same language. The restaurant existed between public and private. Exclusive enough paparazzi didn't loiter. Discreet enough conversations stayed contained. Seren arrived 15 minutes early, studying other diners for threats. Caspian appeared exactly on time, moving with economical grace. Charcoal gray suit tonight. He settled across from her, his back to the room. Supreme confidence or calculated trust. You chose the defensive seat, he observed. That's smart. Most people haven't needed to. Recognition flickered across his face. No, they haven't. After wine arrived, silence settled, waited with awareness that what happened next would determine if this was ending or beginning. Tell me about the person who taught you to choose that seat. The directness disarmed her. What makes you think someone taught me? Because people who develop that instinct young carry it differently. Yours is recent, acquired. Someone made you afraid. The accuracy hit like a fist. His name was Julian Hart. Tell me. So she did. The gallery opening, Cassidy Beaumont, the shattering glass, 27 witnesses. The 2 years before, gradual confidence erosion, isolation from friends, gaslighting that made her question her own memory. By the time she finished, Caspian's hands had formed fists, knuckles white against the tablecloth. Where is he now? With Cassidy, living his best life. Men like Julian always land on their feet. Men like Julian, Caspian repeated slowly, only land on their feet because no one's ever cut them off at the knees. He deliberately unfolded his fists. This gallery show next month? Will Julian know about it? Probably. Charleston's art scene is small. Why? Because I'd like to buy one of your paintings. Something that tells your story in ways that make people uncomfortable. He said it casually, as if offering coffee rather than purchasing unseen art. You don't know if my work is any good. I know you paint broken people. I know you understand pain well enough to translate it visually. That's enough. He paused. I also know what it means to survive something that should have destroyed you. What it costs to keep existing when existing feels like punishment. The statement landed with shared experience weight. Seren felt something crack open in her chest. Not breaking, but allowing light into dark spaces. What happened to you? His gaze drifted past her to somewhere memory-based rather than geographic. My father believed power was measured in how much fear you generated. He built an empire on others' suffering and expected his sons to inherit his philosophy. His focus returned sharp. I disappointed him by developing a conscience. My brother didn't. I spent 15 years proving I could be more ruthless than both, that mercy was choice rather than weakness. The raw confession hung between them. Did you? Prove it? I'm still here. They're not. Flat, factual, devoid of triumph or regret. I learned the most dangerous person in any room is the one who has nothing left to lose except their ability to choose who they protect and who they eliminate. Their food arrived, beautifully plated fish neither touched, too absorbed in conversation. Why are you telling me this? Because you'll receive an invitation to the Charleston Heritage Foundation Gala. It comes with a +1. I'm asking you to use it on me. His voice carried careful neutrality, but his eyes told different stories. Julian will be there. Everyone who watched your humiliation will be there. I want you to walk in with someone who makes them recalculate every assumption about your value. The audacity stole her breath. You want to what? Make him jealous? I want to make him afraid. There's a difference. Jealousy fades. Fear teaches lasting lessons. I want him to see you thriving and understand he no longer has power to touch your happiness. And I want him to see me beside you and understand that if he ever tries to hurt you again, he'll answer to someone whose resources exceed anything his privilege can buy. It should have been terrifying. But Seren leaned forward instead of back. What do you get out of this? The satisfaction of watching a mediocre man realize he's made an enemy he can't buy off. Caspian smiled, first time reaching his eyes. And maybe, if you're willing, the beginning of something where two broken people figure out if their pieces fit together well enough to make something whole. Not love or attraction, but something more fundamental. Recognition, alliance. The suggestion that survival might be easier as joint venture than solo operation. Seren reached across, her hand covering his. I'll paint you something. Something showing how broken things develop edges sharp enough to cut anyone who tries to break them again. And then I'll walk into that gala on your arm and let Julian Hart see exactly what he lost. Caspian's hand turned under hers, fingers interlacing in a grip, feeling like promise and threat equally. Then we have until the gala to make sure when we walk into that room, everyone remembers it for the rest of their lives. And now, returning to that crystalline moment at the Charleston Heritage Foundation Gala, Julian Hart's face cycled through 17 expressions in 30 seconds. Shock, confusion, calculation, forced charm, barely concealed rage, finally settling on a man trying to remember how to breathe while his world reorganized around unwelcome information. From the shelter of Caspian's arm, Seren watched him process it all. The performance was flawless. Caspian's posture relaxed, protective possession suggesting intimate familiarity rather than 3-day acquaintance. I should... Julian gestured vaguely with his bourbon, already retreating. Cassidy's probably wondering where I am. Of course. Caspian's agreeability made the dismissal more cutting. Give her my regards. Tell her the Beaumont Foundation's latest investment prospectus was very optimistic. The pause before optimistic made Julian's retreating steps falter. His throat worked around words that wouldn't form. You've seen the prospectus? I make it my business to understand where money flows in this city, especially when flow depends on reputation rather than actual returns. The Beaumont name opens doors, but doesn't guarantee what's behind them stays valuable. Julian's attention swung to Seren, searching for signs she'd orchestrated this. The irony was delicious. Julian, who'd made her doubt her strategic thinking, now crediting her with machinations beyond what she'd accomplished. Seren, can we talk privately? No. The syllable emerged with more power than she'd known she possessed. We can't. We don't have anything private left. Movement resolved into Cassidy Beaumont gliding across the floor in cream Valentino, 23 years old, moving with absolute confidence. Her hand found Julian's arm proprietarily. Jules, you disappeared. The nickname turned Seren's stomach. She'd never been allowed to use it. And you must be Seren. Julian's told me so much about you. The lie delivered with enough conviction someone might have believed it. All good things, I'm sure. Seren's voice dripped acid, making Cassidy's smile falter. And you are? Cassidy assessed Caspian, cataloging net worth and social utility. Occupied. Caspian's smile didn't reach his eyes. Though, if you're interested in introductions, I'm sure Julian can tell you about my reputation. He seems to have done his research quickly. Julian had gone pale, confirming the implication that in 30 seconds since learning Caspian's name, he'd been running mental calculations through every piece of Charleston intelligence, trying to understand exactly how fucked he was. I don't think we've met. Cassidy tried again, Southern charm showing cracks. We haven't. Your father and I have mutual acquaintances. He's careful. Smart enough to know when waters are too deep for comfortable swimming. The implication hung. Cassidy's father had chosen to stay clear of Caspian's sphere. You should ask him about me sometime, over dinner, somewhere public. Cassidy's hand tightened on Julian's arm, body language shifting from confrontational to uncertain. We should find our table, Julian said quickly, desperate to extract them from spiraling conversation. Seren, it was good to see you. Was it? Because you look like you've seen a ghost. Or maybe realized the woman you spent 2 years breaking has found someone who knows how to build her back stronger than you could tear her down. The ballroom contracted. Nearby conversations quieted as people registered something more interesting than pleasantries unfolding. Julian's mouth opened and closed. Seren, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. She cut him off with therapy-earned authority. I understand you systematically destroyed my confidence so I'd be too afraid to leave. I understand you isolated me so I'd have nowhere to go. I understand you made me believe I was lucky you tolerated me, when the truth is you were threatened by every part of me that didn't serve your ego. The words rang across marble and crystal, carrying to tables where Charleston's elite discovered the evening's entertainment wouldn't come from scheduled auction. That's not... Julian tried, but Cassidy's hand dropped from his arm, doubt dawning in her expression. Jules, what is she talking about? Nothing. She's just bitter about how things ended. You know how women can be when... When what? Seren interrupted. When they finally escape men who make themselves feel powerful by making partners feel small? When they realize being alone is infinitely better than being with someone who treats love like a bargaining chip? Cassidy stepped back from Julian, young face cycling through emotions faster than processing aloud. Whatever sanitized version Julian had told her was colliding with very different narrative delivered with trauma's ring of truth. Julian. Cassidy's voice smaller now, carrying first tremors of someone realizing they might be living a story that had played out badly before. We should discuss this later, Julian said through clenched teeth, reaching for Cassidy's elbow in that gesture Serene recognized. Guiding touch, looking protective, but feeling controlling. Cassidy pulled away, and Seren felt a surge of hope. Maybe this girl would see the warning signs early enough to escape before Julian's emotional violence left years to heal scars. Actually, Caspian interjected smoothly, his voice carrying across space with accustomed authority, I think discussing it now serves everyone's interests. Transparency is so rare at these events. How refreshing to encounter actual truth. He shifted slightly, drawing every eye as effectively as spotlight. Julian Hart presents himself as Charleston aristocracy, but examine the foundation that reputation rests on, and interesting patterns emerge. Conversational tone made words more devastating. Business deals evaporating under scrutiny. Partnerships ending in quiet litigation sealed with NDAs. A pattern of relationships with women who diminish in his presence until they escape, only to thrive once he's gone. You don't know what you're talking about. Julian's voice cracked, fury and fear competing. I know 3 former business partners have interesting stories about contracts negotiated in bad faith. I know the Beaumont Foundation's investment in your real estate venture is predicated on projections not matching any reasonable market analysis. I know you're 6 weeks from cash flow crisis your future father-in-law doesn't know about yet, because you've been careful to hide it behind accounting creativity that regulators find fascinating once invited to look closely. Color drained from Julian's face completely. Beside him, Cassidy had gone very still, expression shuddering as she processed information requiring complete reorganization of everything believed true. How do you? Julian started, then stopped. Asking how confirmed accuracy. I make it my business to understand people who hurt those under my protection. Caspian's arm tightened fractionally around Serene's waist, claiming and defending simultaneously. And you, Julian, made the catastrophic mistake of hurting someone I've decided to protect. So now your business is my business, and I promise, I'm far better at this particular business than you've ever been. The threat hung like visible smoke, dissipating nowhere. Around them, the gala had effectively stopped. Conversations abandoned. Every influential person watching Julian's reputation develop cracks wide enough to swallow everything he'd built. I could ruin you. Julian tried desperately, hollowly. To whom? Caspian's interruption was gentle, almost pitying. Which connection has more influence than I do? Which door accessible to you is closed to me? Which person in this room would choose you over someone whose displeasure comes with actual consequences? He paused, letting Julian's mind race through his Rolodex, finding nothing. Make your phone call. I'll wait. Watch how quickly your supposed allies discover urgent reasons to be elsewhere. Serene felt fierce satisfaction expand in her chest. This stranger who'd walked into her life was systematically dismantling the person who'd spent 2 years making her feel worthless, doing it with casual precision, suggesting routine maintenance rather than exceptional effort. Julian's hand shook, raising his bourbon glass, liquid sloshing dangerously. His eyes darted around, searching for allies or exits, finding only faces watching with fascinated horror. This isn't over, he managed, but even he heard how empty the threat sounded. It is, actually. Absolute finality. You're done, Julian. Not immediately. That would be too kind. But systematically, inevitably, in ways you'll only understand once they've happened. Your business will contract. Your social currency will devalue. Your relationship, eyes flicking to Cassidy, will endure whatever strain your secrets create. And through it all, you'll know it happened because you failed to recognize that some people aren't discarded without consequences. He turned them away with smooth grace, guiding Serene toward terrace doors, leaving Julian and Cassidy frozen in wreckage. On the terrace in cool night air, Serene's legs finally registered sustained. Adrenaline. She swayed, caught immediately by Caspian's arm, pulled against his solid warmth. Did that really just happen? That was just the opening act, Caspian murmured against her hair. Tomorrow, we make sure he understands tonight wasn't theater, it was prophecy. Morning after the gala arrived with post-storm clarity, Charleston's sunlight hitting the harbor at angles, transforming ordinary water into molten gold. Seren stood on Caspian's hotel suite balcony, coffee warming her hands, watching the city wake to a day fundamentally different for Julian Hart. Caspian was inside making calls in 3 languages, voice a low murmur issuing instructions rather than requests. She'd slept in the suite's second bedroom. Separate spaces despite intimacy performed for the gala's audience. The arrangement felt right. Boundaries respected even as alliance deepened. Her phone had been buzzing since 6:47 a.m. Texts from Marcus about people asking about her work. Messages from former friends suddenly remembering her existence. 3 missed calls from Cassidy. She ignored it all, choosing instead to stand in borrowed peace. Coffee's getting cold. Caspian appeared beside her silently. He'd changed from tuxedo into dark jeans and gray Henley that somehow made him look more dangerous. And your phone is demonstrating impressive persistence. Vultures? Everyone wants to know what happened, who you are, whether I'm actually dating you, or if it was theater. What do you want it to be? Seren turned to face him fully. I want it to be real enough that when this is over, and Julian is whatever you're going to make him, you and I figure out if broken things can actually fit together, or if we're just using each other's sharp edges to feel less fragile. Something softened in Caspian's expression. I can work with that level of honesty. He pulled out his phone, swiping before turning it toward her. Your ex-boyfriend's morning is about to get significantly worse. I wanted you to see it happen in real time. The phone displayed a financial terminal, numbers scrolling past. Caspian slowed the feed. Julian's real estate development depends on a construction loan from Atlantic Maritime Bank. The loan officer who approved it despite questionable numbers is Julian's boarding school friend. Different screen. As of 7 minutes ago, that loan officer is on administrative leave pending review. The loan is now subject to emergency audit, freezing disbursements for minimum 60 days. Seren's fingers tightened on her mug. How did you? The bank's CEO owes me favors measured in numbers that make mortgage fraud investigations seem like reasonable investments in maintaining good relationships. Another swipe. Julian's construction crew needs payroll by Friday, or they walk per contract. He can't cover that out of pocket without liquidating assets, which he can't do quickly without taking losses triggering margin calls on his brokerage accounts. Dominoes laid out, in neat rows on screen, each piece labeled and dated, designed to collapse in sequence. This is destruction. This is consequences. Gentle but firm correction. Julian built his life on others' pain and trust nobody would push back. I'm simply ensuring he understands that assumption was incorrect. He pocketed his phone. You should know. Cassidy called her father at 3:00 a.m. They spoke 47 minutes. This morning, Edward Beaumont requested emergency meeting with Julian's financial advisor. That meeting is happening in... He checked his watch. 12 minutes. How do you know all this? Because I make it my business to know. Information is currency more valuable than money. Money buys things. Information buys leverage. Julian's entire empire is built on information asymmetry. I've simply eliminated that asymmetry. Now everyone knows exactly what he is. Seren's phone buzzed. A text from unknown number. This is Cassidy. Can we talk? Please? She showed Caspian. His expression remained neutral, but posture suggested he'd expected this. Your call, though I'd point out she's had 6 months to ask. The fact she's asking now, after watching you with someone powerful, tells you something about her relationship with truth and convenience. Harsh, but fair. Seren deleted the message. Whatever Cassidy was processing, Seren didn't owe her emotional labor. She'd survived Julian without help from the woman who'd replaced her. Cassidy could survive discovering who Julian actually was without Serin's guidance. The day unfolded with methodical precision. Caspian took calls, issued instructions, and monitored cascading consequences. Seren painted, fingers moving across canvas with freedom she hadn't felt in years. By noon, Marcus called with news that 2 collectors had inquired about purchasing pieces from her upcoming show, sight unseen. By 2 p.m., an Atlanta gallery extended invitation for solo exhibition. By 4 p.m., her Instagram following had tripled. Art blogs running pieces about Charleston's emerging voice. "This is you?" she accused Caspian, who'd been working on his laptop with focused intensity. "You're orchestrating all of this." "I'm removing obstacles. Your talent is your own. I'm simply ensuring people who should see it actually do, rather than letting Julian's whisper campaign keep you invisible." He looked up. "There's a difference between creating success and allowing it to exist unmolested." Her phone rang. Her mother from Seattle. They hadn't spoken in 2 months. "Hi, Mom. Seren Grace Vale, you have been holding out on me. I'm having lunch with Nancy Pemberton, and she's showing me pictures from some gala where you're apparently dating a man who looks like he stepped out of a cologne advertisement directed by someone with a gun fetish." "Despite everything," Seren laughed, "it's complicated." "Complicated is good. Complicated means interesting. Simple is what you had with Julian." Her mother's voice softened. "Are you happy, sweetheart? Actually happy? Not just surviving?" Saren looked across the suite at Caspian, who'd returned to his laptop but whose attention she felt even without eye contact. "I'm getting there. Ask me again in a month." They talked 20 minutes. Real conversation, not surface updates. When they hung up, Saren felt lighter. Evening brought news via Marcus. Julian had canceled tomorrow's gallery board meeting. The text included a Charleston Chronicle link about questions regarding financial practices at Heart Development LLC. Carefully worded, legally precise, but clear. Julian was under scrutiny, and scrutiny was professional poison in a city running on reputation. "How long will this go on?" Seren asked over delivered dinner. "The systematic destruction? Until he's no longer capable of hurting you or anyone else." Caspian set down his fork. "I'm not interested in making him suffer for suffering's sake. I'm interested in removing his power to harm. That requires dismantling resources and reputation. The first takes money and connections. The second takes time and persistence. And when it's done, then we figure out what we are when we're not united by common enemy." Devastating honesty. I won't lie and say I'm some reformed villain looking for redemption. I'm a man who's been broken and rebuilt himself into something dangerous, and I'm offering you the option of standing close enough to that danger that it becomes your shield instead of threat. It should have been terrifying. Probably would have been 6 months ago. But survival had taught her that safety was illusion, that real protection came from being strong enough, or strategic enough, or connected enough, that hurting you cost more than it was worth. "I want to see how the story ends," Seren said. "Julian's story, our story, all of it. I want to be present for every part instead of protected from difficult pieces." Caspian's smile was small, but genuine. "Then tomorrow, we make sure Julian understands that last night wasn't aberration. It was the new permanent state of his existence." 3 months after the gala, Charleston had reorganized itself around new information, the way a body compensated around injury, adapting, finding new equilibrium. Julian Hart's name still appeared in circles, but always with qualifiers now, always with the tone reserved for cautionary tales. Seren stood in Marcus's gallery during her solo exhibition opening, surrounded by 23 paintings telling the story of breaking and rebuilding in brushstrokes, making viewers uncomfortable with how well they understood. Titles like The Cost of Being Manageable and What Remains After Erasure. Critics called her work viscerally honest and unflinchingly raw. The gallery was full, actual collectors, not social climbers. Marcus was floating, having already placed red dots beside 14 pieces, sales keeping Seren financially stable for the next year minimum. But she wasn't watching collectors. She was watching the door. He materialized at 8:47 p.m. Julian, slipping through the entrance with furtive energy, hoping to avoid notice. He'd lost weight. Not the intentional kind, but the stress kind. His expensive suit hung wrong. The tan had faded. The confidence had evaporated. What remained was someone who'd discovered every system he'd relied on had trapdoors he'd never noticed until falling through them. Seren watched him move through the gallery, stopping at each painting with careful attention, searching for something specific. His face cycled through emotions as he recognized himself in work exploring emotional manipulations architecture, systematic erosions mathematics, the particular violence leaving no visible scars. She let him complete his circuit before approaching, timing it so they'd meet before the centerpiece, a large canvas titled Still Single, depicting a woman's silhouette fragmenting into geometric shards, each sharp enough to cut, reconstructing into something resembling wings. You came. Julian flinched at being noticed, body tensing as if preparing for attack. I had to see what you made from... He gestured vaguely. From us. There was no us. There was you using me as a canvas for your insecurities, and me mistaking that for love because I didn't yet understand the difference. He absorbed the words with visible effort. Up close, the damage was more apparent. Shadows under eyes, trembling hands, and defeated shoulders. This was what happened when someone built everything on image and influence, discovering both were more fragile than believed. Cassidy left me, he said abruptly. 6 weeks ago. Said she couldn't trust someone who'd lied about so much. Said I made her feel the way you described at the gala. Small, manageable, grateful for crumbs. His laugh was bitter, newly self-aware. Turns out young doesn't mean stupid. She figured it out faster than you did. Distant pity for the man who'd mistaken cruelty for strength and was only now understanding the distinction. The business went under, Julian continued. The audit found irregularities. Loan got recalled. I had to liquidate at unrecoverable losses. My father won't take my calls. My friends? Another bitter laugh. Turns out I didn't actually have any. Just people who found me useful until I wasn't. Why are you telling me this? Because you won. Raw admission, stripped of remaining pride. You and your... Gesture presumably toward Caspian across the gallery. Whatever he is. You won so completely I don't even have the luxury of pretending I might recover. I'm done in this city. Probably done anywhere reputation matters. His eyes finally met hers. Genuine remorse beneath self-pity visible. And the worst part is realizing I deserve it. That I built everything on hurting people who couldn't fight back. And the second someone fought back with actual resources, I collapsed like I was made of nothing. Closest thing to apology Julian would likely ever manage. Acknowledgement without asking forgiveness. I didn't do this to you, Seren said. You did this by being someone whose existence depended on others' pain and silence. I just stopped being silent. Caspian just stopped pretending men like you should be protected from consequences. What happens now? Now you leave Charleston, start over somewhere else, Maybe become someone different, or maybe find new victims who haven't learned to recognize predators. Even voice. Factual. That's not my concern anymore. You're not my concern. You're just someone I used to know who taught me exactly what I'm worth by demonstrating what I'm not. Julian nodded slowly, acceptance settling. For what it's worth, and I know it's worth nothing, I am sorry. Not for getting caught, but for who I was to you, to Cassidy, to everyone I damaged because damaging people made me feel powerful. He searched her face. He's good for you. You look like you finally remembered how to breathe. And yes, he is. Julian left without another word. Seren watched him go, expecting triumph or satisfaction. Instead, she felt only quiet settling, like bones finding proper alignment after being set wrong. He looked sufficiently destroyed. Caspian appeared with champagne. Should I feel guilty about how much satisfaction that brings me? Only if I should for sharing it. Seren accepted the glass, fingers brushing in exchange. 3 months of careful courtship, actual courtship, had taught them both to appreciate contact rather than rush consumption. They discovered shared damage didn't automatically translate to compatible healing. Caspian's wounds made him controlling when stressed. Seren's trauma made her retreat when overwhelmed. They'd had 3 significant fights and 2 near breakups before learning to recognize patterns and interrupt them before damage occurred. But they'd also discovered broken things could fit together if both committed to honest assembly rather than forcing misaligned pieces. That vulnerability was strength when mutual. Protection felt different when offered rather than imposed. That love, if that's what this was becoming, required choosing each other repeatedly. Marcus says we've sold 17 pieces, Caspian reported, his hand finding her waist with developed casual intimacy. You're officially financially successful. How does it feel? Like I finally understand creating something from pain instead of being consumed by it. She leaned into his warmth, watching gallery crowds circulate. Thank you. For all of it. For seeing me when I'd forgotten how to be visible. For fighting battles I couldn't fight alone. For staying even when I wasn't easy to stay with. Caspian's thumb traced circles against her hip. You were never meant to fight alone. No one is. We're just taught to believe needing help is weakness instead of wisdom. He paused carefully. I love you. Not because you're broken and I'm broken and we're using each other as crutches, but because you're strong in ways I'm weak, and I'm strong in ways you're learning, and together we might actually build something that doesn't collapse the first time reality tests its foundation. The declaration landed like sunlight through clouds. That's possibly the least romantic I love you in recorded history, she observed, turning to face him. Would you prefer I lie and say you complete me, or some other nonsense ignoring the actual complexity of 2 damaged people figuring out coexistence? His eyes held hers with characteristic intensity. No, Seren admitted, rising to kiss him with confidence of someone who'd learned her value wasn't determined by others' willingness to recognize it. I'd prefer exactly what you said. Truth. Even when complicated. Especially when complicated. The kiss deepened, and Marcus made a delighted sound, suggesting another painting sold. But Seren barely registered it. She was too busy understanding that revenge, while satisfying, had never been the point. The point had been reclamation of art, confidence, understanding that being alone was better than being diminished, but being chosen by someone valuing strength rather than compliance was better than either. Julian had asked if she was still single with smug certainty her worth was defined by romantic attachment. Standing in a gallery full of her success with someone whose darkness complemented rather than consumed hers, Seren finally had her answer. She'd never been single the way Julian meant it. She'd been waiting for art deserving attention, for love feeling like partnership, for the version of herself knowing how to be whole without needing someone else's approval to feel complete. And when the dangerous man had taken her hand that night at the gala, he hadn't been claiming or saving her. He'd been recognizing her, seeing the steel beneath fragility, strategy beneath pain. The woman who'd survived destruction and decided it had only revealed edges sharp enough to cut anything trying to break her again. That recognition, it turned out, was worth more than any revenge could ever be. Spring arrived in Charleston with particular intensity. Azaleas exploding in violent pink, jasmine perfuming air finally feeling warm instead of comfortable. Seren and Caspian stood on their shared penthouse balcony, the space converted to accommodate both his need for strategic positioning and her need for natural light. Below them, the city continued ancient rhythms, unaware that in this apartment, two people broken by different hands had figured out how to be whole together without erasing scars proving they'd survived. Julian moved to Portland, Caspian reported, scrolling through his phone. Got a job in commercial real estate, entry level, uses his middle name now. Good for him, Serene said, meaning it. She'd stopped tracking her ex months ago, stopped measuring success against his failures. Her phone buzzed. Cassidy, who'd reached out 3 months ago with actual apology and coffee request. They'd developed cautious friendship built on shared experience. Cassidy was in therapy now, working through patterns of choosing diminishing men. The message, "Your painting sold at auction for 6 figures. You're officially expensive now." Drinks to celebrate? Seren showed Caspian. His smile was genuine, pride evident. You deserve it. Every dollar, every recognition. We deserve it. I made the art, but you made sure people could see it without Julian's interference. Partnership, remember? Partnership, he agreed, kissing her temple with casual affection, replacing initial careful distance. They stood watching Charleston wake, two people who'd learned the best revenge wasn't enemy destruction, but life construction so full and genuine their opinions became irrelevant. Julian had asked if she was still single. The question itself had been the weapon, implying her value required external validation. Now, 6 months of daily self-choice while also choosing Caspian, Seren understood. She'd never needed someone to complete or save or validate her. She'd needed someone to see her completely, damage and strength, fear and courage, past trauma and future potential, and decide all of it together was worth staying for, fighting for, building something real with. That night at the gala when the dangerous man took her hand and her ex went pale, it hadn't been fairy tale beginning or revenge plot ending. It had been the moment two people understanding survival recognized each other and decided surviving together might actually be worth the risk of breaking again. Some stories end with villains destroyed and heroes triumphant. This one ended with broken things learning to be whole, with pain transformed into art, with a woman remembering that being single was never the insult it pretended to be. That real tragedy was being with someone who made you smaller, and real triumph was becoming large enough that no one could diminish you again. Still single? Julian had asked with a smirk. Seren finally had her answer. No, but I would be, and I'd be fine. The difference is, now I'm choosing this, choosing him, choosing us, not because I need to be chosen, but because being chosen by someone who sees all of me and stays feels like the opposite of everything you taught me love was supposed to be. That freedom was worth more than any protection, any destruction, and any vindication. And in the end, recognizing your own worth, that was the real victory. Remember, the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you. It's building a life so genuine that their absence becomes irrelevant. You are worth fighting for, worth protecting, worth choosing. Not because someone else says so, but because you decided you were. Sometimes the right person recognizes that strength before you fully see it yourself. That's not rescue. That's recognition. And recognition, when genuine, can be the beginning of something truly worth building.